Okay, so this is about the third time I have done this video. I just can't get words out for the life of me today. So let's see how much of a train wreck this video is going to be. Yay! Okay, but in all honesty, hello everyone, my name is Onita, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to be doing, I'm going to be doing the wrap-up in the month of January. I have read a total of 6 books. First book I read in the month of January, Playing Bad Heroines by Emily M. Deanforth. And also I'm going to be telling you about the books I read in the order that I read them in, so this one being the first one. 1902, Brookhorn School for Girls. Students Flo and Clara are madly in love with each other, as well as completely obsessed with the story of Mary McLean, which is actually a real book, which I didn't even really notice until I read some reviews online, which is really quite fascinating and really ramps up the story. Completely obsessed with the story of Mary McLean, the scandalous debut memoir by 19-year-old McLean. A few months later, they are found dead in the woods after a horrific wasp attack. The book lay next to their intertwined bodies. In 5 years, the school is closed, but not before 3 more people die on the property, each in a troubling way. Over 100 years later, Brookhorns opens its doors once more when a crew of young actresses arrive to film a high-profile movie about the rumored Brookhorns curse. And as past and present become grimly entangled, it's soon impossible to tell quite where the curse leaves and Hollywood begins. So, the book is split up into 2 parts. The first part focusing more on the past in 1902 at Brookhorns when the curse first happens, when the first set of deaths happens, I should say. And the second part focuses more on the making of the movie and present or modern day. And the second part focuses more on making the movie about the curse and is set mainly in modern day. And with both of the parts you do get to see characters from the past and characters from modern day. But the first part does focus more on the characters and a little bit more on the curse than the second part does. And another thing, the book has footnotes at the bottom of the book, or the bottom of the pages, I should say. It's not on all pages, and they vary in length. Some of them are like nearly full page footnotes. There's only been one occurrence of that, but there are others where they are shorter and more manageable to read. So if you're someone who doesn't really like reading footnotes in this book, just be a little bit mindful of that. I don't mind. I think it added more world building, more depth to the place and to the place of Brookhorns and the characters in this book. There are female-female relationships in this book as well as a bisexual woman in here as well. You also get a gender fluid person in here as well. Now it's either gender fluid or non-binary because the pronouns they use is they, them, and their. So that's making me think whether it's gender neutral or non-binary, so it's quite diverse. And the non-binary or gender fluid person is actually a side character, and you get to see that person more towards part 2. And also another thing I really like about this book, you get imagery as well. There's illustrations. I'm really sorry if you can't see that, if it has zoomed out or made it blurry or whatever, but just look at that. That's so gorgeous. So gorgeous. I love it. So good. So the director of the movie is a gay Indian American man. Not Native American Indian, but the country of India. So American Indian American or something like that. I'm sorry if I'm getting that completely wrong. The main characters in this book are incredibly well written, very diverse, like I said. They're realistic, they're complex, they each have their own voice within the story. And there were actually quite some steamy scenes happening in this book, which I was not expecting at all. Now, it is a horror book. I think it's classified as gothic horror. And I would describe the horror as being a mixture of the movie Oculus. If you haven't seen that movie, I highly recommend it. It's a really good horror movie. As well as cursed horror sets. So cursed horror sets from really popular, older, classic horror movies. And I'm used to watching horror, not so much reading horror books, but I am used to watching horror movies. And there was one scene in here where the actors, or the actresses I should say, they are in a hot spring in Brookhorn. That was actually quite creepy. That creeped me out a little bit. And the horror in this book is quite atmospheric and well written. It gives you like a bit of an unsettling feeling. And the amount of wasps, if you want to know what all the wasps are in the world, they're in this bloody book. The amount of wasps in here, it's bloody creepy. It really is. Now, the truth about how Brookhorn became to be a cursed place is explained in this book. And the feeling I get is that there's kind of like an underlying occult, witchy kind of vibes in this book. And it especially tells you more about it towards the end. And I need some things clarified in there because I have a few theories about why it's haunted and about some things, and I just need it clarified. I really do. I'm hanging on the edge of my seat here, people. And when it came to making the movie about Brookhorn, and yes, it is pronounced Brookhorn, that actually tells you in the footnotes how the school is pronounced, and really enjoyed reading about the behind the scenes of making the movie. That was quite fascinating and very insightful. There was a mention that there is a narrator here that is telling you the story of Brookhorn. And like I said, I need it clarified a little bit because it is a little bit uncertain. I think it's actually left for you to interpret who the narrator is. But overall, I felt it was a very fast-paced book. It was atmospheric, diverse cast. It had really good writing, really good horror atmospheric writing. It's just some of those questions that were left unanswered at the end of the book that dropped my score a little bit. So overall, this is a 4.75 stars out of 5 book. So if those questions had have been answered, it would have been a 5 stars. But because some of the questions were left unanswered, it ended up being 4.75 out of 5 stars. I feel like I'm getting on a roll here with this. It was a little hard in the beginning of how to start this video, but I think I'm getting there. Well, I feel like I'm getting there anyway. The second book I read is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke, I should say. Piranesi lives in the house, perhaps he always has. In his notebooks, day after day, he makes a clear and careful record of its wonders. The labyrinth of halls, the thousands upon thousands of statues, the tides that thunder up staircases, the clouds that move in slow procession through the upper halls. Tuesdays and Fridays, Piranesi sees his friend, the other. At other times, he brings tributes of food and water lilies to the dead. At other times, he brings tributes of food and water lilies to the dead. But mostly he is alone. Messages begin to appear, scratched out in chalk on the pavements. There is someone new in the house. But who are they and what do they want? Are they your friend, or do they bring destruction and madness as the other claims? Lost texts must be found. Secrets must be uncovered. The world that Piranesi thought he knew is becoming strange and dangerous. The beauty of the house is immeasurable, its kindness infinite. I had said in my January TBR that I thought this was also going to be another horror book. It wasn't. It was more fantasy than anything. But I guess if you've read this book, and if you think that the way that the statues were written in this book were a little creepy and unsettling and a little bit uneasy, then I guess you could say it does have a little bit of a horror element in it, but it is mainly all fantasy. It does have some elements of history and magical realism and also parallel universes. Yeah, and it's a little difficult to talk about this book to you because it is short. It's like around 250-ish pages, but the beauty in the book is actually reading the book and the beautiful atmospheric descriptive writing in it. Don't trust the characters because they're not really who they seem to be. And like in Plain Bad Heroines, it does have a very witchy, occult, pagan type of witchy vibes about it because it does mention stuff about gods. Like I said, I really can't talk too much about this book without giving it away. But I absolutely loved it. So good. So good. I was just looking at my notes and it also mentioned stuff about powers long forgotten and transgressive thinking and ideas. And the story is told in a journal entry format. So, but it's actually not as bad as, say, something like, I haven't read this book, but Daisy Jones and the Six. The way that the chapters the way the diary entries are written is quite different and unique. I'll just show you. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll just show you if you didn't get to see that. It says, so instead of saying like the 10th of August, like 2012 or whatever, it says, entry for the 10th day of the 6th month in the year the albatross came to the southwestern halls. So it's quite different and unique the way that the diary entries are written in. And as I've said before, and in addition to the atmospheric and beautiful writing, the writing is also quite formal. And that is because Piranesi considers himself and the other as scientists. It will take some time to get into the book, but once you do, it takes off from there, and it's so good and so immersive as well. It's a very quick read because, as I said, it's a short book, and this is her shortest book. Her other book, Susanna Clark, this is I'm talking about, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, is about 1,000 pages long. And now that I've read this book, I really want to read that book next. Whenever I get the chance to anyway. And I also forgot to mention I gave Piranesi 4 stars out of 5. And the next book I read in the month of January, being the third book I read, is The Wrong Family by Taryn Fisher. Have you ever been wrong about someone? Juno was wrong about Winnie Crouch. Before moving in with the Crouch family, Juno thought Winnie and her husband Nigel had the perfect marriage, the perfect son, the perfect life. And now that she's living in the beautiful house, she sees the cracks in the crumbling facade are too deep to ignore. Still, she isn't one to judge. After her grim diagnosis, the retired therapist simply wants a place to live out the rest of her days in peace. But the peace is shattered the day Juno overhears a chilling conversation between Winnie and Nigel. She shouldn't get involved, she really shouldn't. But this could be her chance to make a few things right. Because if you thought Juno doesn't have a secret of her own, then you were wrong about her too. And just some quick little trigger warnings for this book: for homelessness, suicide, self-harm, drug and alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, and violence. So just be wary getting into this book. So Winnie and Nigel, the married couple in this book, they are always constantly fighting. Well, they do have moments where they don't really fight, but they weren't like they used to be before. And the reason why they are still together, even though they fight a lot, is because they are basically forced together. Like they are forced to stay together for the sake of the secret that they share. And Juno, a retired therapist with secrets of her own, ends up moving with the Crouch family, but not the way you think. It's not the way you think she's going to be moving in. It took me by surprise. I don't know if I'm a bit of a dumbass or something, but when the book said how she moves in with them, I was like, oh, okay, that's different. So the reason why she moves in with the family is so that she can get involved in their life and to help them with their problems. For me, at least, I felt this book was better than The Wives. Like, the story itself was strong. I like the characters. Do I like the characters? They were fine. I think the characters were fine. The story was just better developed, as well as just being a little bit stronger than The Wives. Like, I think it dealt with a lot of topics quite well for me, and there's definitely quite a bit of topics of conversation to be had within this book. The secrets are revealed to you. Don't worry. And it's not even like crappy secret like in The Wives. It actually kind of made sense for who the characters were, if that makes sense. If not, you'll have to read the book. Sorry. Like I said before, better than The Wives, for me at least. Just better story overall, and yeah, I don't really have much else to say other than for me it was better than The Wives. And I gave The Wrong Family by Taryn Fisher, 4 stars out of 5. The fourth book I read in the month of January is Can't Even by Anne Helen Peterson. This is a non-fiction book and is a book about millennials and how and why they became the burnout generation. This book does focus more on the USA, but it does also mention other countries and how they deal with burnout and how burnout affects them, like the citizens in other countries. And it opens up with talking about the history of burnout and how it kind of stemmed from millennials' parents. And one thing, actually a few things that really surprised me about this book is that it talks about how race, gender, socioeconomic class, and how your childhood upbringing, those 4 things can affect and how it can bring about burnout and how they experience it. And the author also included her experiences with burnout as well, which I think added a nice little personal touch to it. And also, I didn't actually quite realize how many other books there were talking about millennials in general and how there's so much pressure put on us. But she also mentions and acknowledges that there are other books as well, and she takes the quotes out of the book. Like, she gives you the books and all that kind of stuff. I think she would have had to ask permission for it, but she does give like little quotes from those books as well, which I think was actually quite nice. There's actually quite a lot of books that I wasn't expecting about the topic of millennials and how pressure is put on us and stuff like that. I would have gotten through this book a little bit quicker if there hadn't have been some chapters where it was quite academic in how it was written. Because like I said, it does talk about, there have actually been 2 instances actually about the author talking about the history of burnout and how it came to be that we took on, like us as millennials took on the brunt of it. And the reason why I found it a bit, well, like I said, it was a bit academic and how it was, and they talked all about figures and it just read like a news article. So if you are used to reading news articles, it wouldn't be an issue for you, but since I'm really not, it was a little bit hard for me. Like, it kind of just went over my head kind of thing. But there were only 2 instances of when that happened, and the rest of the book I flew through. It doesn't tell you about tips and tricks on how to overcome burnout like I thought it would, like I had said that I thought it would, or that I hoped it would in my TBR. And the author acknowledges this, and she said that now if you've noticed something, like, I'm just paraphrasing here, she said that she knows she hasn't given the readers tips on how to overcome burnout. But the overall point of this book was showing how burnout can affect you and other people around you, and that this book is meant to help you pinpoint things so that you yourself can bring it up and talk about it a bit more, so that you yourself can figure out, oh, okay, how can I like ease the pressure off myself, if that makes sense. But it was very informative, very eye-opening, and I think everyone should read this book. Everyone should read this book, even though it focuses more on the USA, but it should be required reading. Everyone should read this book. And I gave it 4 stars out of 5. And book number 5 I read in the month of January is Fable by Adrienne Young, and is a YA fantasy about a 17-year-old girl, Fable, whose goal it is to get off the island to take her rightful place beside her father. And her father abandons her on an island called Javal after the Lark, which is the ship that sunk while battling a storm when she was 13. So her father abandons her there on that island of Javal, and her mother ended up dying on that ship as well, on the Lark, which is the ship that sunk during the storm. So Javal is an island where dredging for coins, gems, and other rare gems take place. And Fable must rely on her skills that her mother taught her to survive on the island of Javal, because it's quite treacherous and it's quite dangerous to live on there and to work on there as well, because everyone steals from you. And when an opportunity arises for Fable to get off the island, she enlists the help of West, young captain on the ship Marigold, to take her to her rightful place beside her father. And it soon becomes apparent that West is not who he seems to be. Together they must survive the treacherous storms of the Narrows to get to where she has to be. So this is the first book in a duology, and even though I found some parts to be predictable, like there were some parts that took me a little bit off guard that I didn't really see coming, I still really enjoyed it, even though I found some, like maybe 2 or 3 instances maybe where I found it was a little bit predictable. And the writing is quite vivid, and even though there really wasn't a big wow factor to it, so the book was written good for the story it wanted to tell. And what it does really well in is its complex characters and its world building. And also, I think people will really enjoy about this book is its themes of found family. And the relationship that Fable has with her father. It's quite a complex and bittersweet one, because he knows he can take care of herself because he abandoned her there and she has skills that her mother taught her on how to like dig and dredge for gems. So he knows she can take care of herself, but at the same time he keeps telling her that she is not made for the world, even though she has been living on ships and living the trader life, like the life of a pirate trader or just a trader, I think it is. I don't think there's really pirates on there, but the life of a trader for all her life basically. And West is also another completely complex character as well, and I think he's one people will really enjoy. He is such a softie, such a sweetie, and he really takes care of people, like under all that brooding, quiet, like secretive person. He's a real sweetie. He's a sweetheart. He's a little softie. And the romance, there is a bit of romance in this book, and it is slow burn. Far out. Hurry up. Is what I was thinking. Like, if you like slow burn romances, this one is for you. And when the romance was eventually revealed, which isn't until like it's slow burn, it's not going to happen until like the end of the book, you know. But when it happened, I was a little unsure about it. But I think you need to take yourself out of the position of the reader and put yourself in their shoes and just take a few minutes away just to really think about it before you think, oh yeah, okay, it kind of makes sense. You know, I actually like that now, because I think the romance would have worked better if it had been a little bit more fleshed out. And also it'll take a little bit of time to think about the romance with the information that the book does give you. Like, it does make sense eventually. I don't want to say it sounds insta-lovey because it doesn't, but it's one where you really have to take yourself out of it and put yourself in their shoes kind of thing. There is another female character in this book, and the good thing about this book is that there is no hatred, no jealousy between the two female characters, which is really good to see. And obviously, West has a crew aboard his ship, the Marigold. Obviously, when West says to Fable, yes, I will help you, the crew are a little bit hesitant. They're like, hey, what's going on here? You didn't tell us, Captain, that we were going to take on this person. But that was only in the beginning that the crew themselves were a little bit hesitant about Fable, but that ended up being resolved at, I think, quite a good pace. I thought it was quite good, the pacing at how those issues, those questions that the crew had were resolved. Ooh, and the side characters are great as well. And there's also a male-male mixed race relationship in here, which is good for diversity, people. I know I've talked about the crew and West and Fable's father, and I haven't talked that much about Fable herself. She's good. I like Fable. She's not that character that's like, ooh, I know better and all that kind of stuff. Like, when someone tells her to do something, she will do it. Yes, she's confident. She's confident, I don't find her cocky, and I actually really quite enjoy her. I think she's quite good. And the last point I wanted to talk about this book is the world building. Very vivid, the way that it was written. So you have two sides of the sea or earth or whatever. So you have the Narrows, which is where the poorer people live, which is where a lot of the storms happen. Like, I know I have said that the people in the Narrows are considered poorer, but there are moments where they can rise to power, like to have some sort of power. The real wealth and the real power is in the unnamed sea, which is where a lot of the very rich, very powerful people are. And some people from the Narrows can go into the unnamed sea to trade gems and pyres and other like opals and coins and stuff like that. There are moments, like 2 instances, when that can happen. It doesn't happen a lot. Hi, editing me here. I don't know what happened with that last little clip. No clue, I really don't. So yeah, the unnamed sea, where there's a lot of powerful people that live there, and I really enjoyed it. Vivid, great characters. The ending left on a bit of a cliffhanger, so be warned about that. There was a bit of a cliffhanger ending, and I really need to know. Like, I need the book now. I need to know what's going to happen. So I think I gave it 4.5 stars overall, and I really do recommend it to people. Okay, last one, everyone. I did better than I expected, considering I did this video like 3 times. The last book I read, A Dance with Dragons, Book 5, Part 1, in the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin. Now, probably my favourite read of the month. I'm not going to go too much into it because it will spoil it. Like, it will spoil the rest of the series for you because it is a continuation. Like, I'll need to read part 2 to this to confirm that it is my favourite. And I did give books 1, 2, and the third book part 2, and part 2 of the third book 5 stars out of 5. But there was just something about this book that I just loved. I loved it so much. Some things, like, came to realization for me. Like, for example, like, I think all of the reasons why I love this book, the additional world building you get, and the added perspectives of characters that you wouldn't normally hear about. Characters are growing, and the Game of Thrones, like the game to sit on the Iron Throne, is ramping up, and as the characters are growing, they are making tougher decisions, and you just see them grow, like I keep saying. And it's just so good. So good. Planes are being made as well. Like, really tough planes, and planes that are overshadowed by other planes, and planes that don't work out well with other characters and stuff like that. And as they're growing into their own person, as they're growing into power, they're making increasingly tougher decisions. And this book got really dark, like almost grimdark. I haven't really read any grimdark novels, but it got really dark and gory, especially with Reek's chapters. They were quite hard to read. And I ended up reading this book alongside Fable, and I really liked the comparison with ship life and what life would be like on a ship, and the things you go through, like the storms and the food as well. Oh yeah, one thing I love about the series, the descriptions of food are really bloody good. It makes me want to eat. And I think both authors overall, like George R.R. Martin and Adrian Young, I think they both did a really good job, even an incredible job, with describing life, living life on a ship. And I'm loving my reread of the A Song of Ice and Fire series. So overall, 5 stars out of 5. I think water between talking about books is really helping me, because talking a lot hurts my throat. I'm not used to talking a lot. Okay, that's it for this video. We've got these 3. as well as Fable, Can't Even, and The Wrong Family. I've read all those books on ebooks. Via ebooks, I should say. So, if you like this video, make sure to leave a like. If you want to subscribe, you can do so down below if you want to. And let me know down in the comments down below what books you read in the month of January and what your favourites were. I know mine. I actually really enjoyed all of them. Nothing was below a 4 stars, which is a really good, strong way to start off the year, I think. My favorite. They're also good, but probably this one, A Dance with Dragons. And I'm also realizing that I have a love for anything to do with like witches or something with occults and pagans and like gods and like higher power, stuff like that. So I want to read more of those type of books. If you have any recommendations for me, please let me know down below. That's all for this, guys. I know this is uploaded a little bit late and different setting because I'm actually sitting on a chair because I said in my February TBR that I was a little bit uncomfortable sitting on the ground. So yeah, and I'll see you next time. Bye!